everyone, I'm Dan Vorlich with the Steel Keg Association. Really excited to welcome Brian Crawford, President and CEO of the Beer Institute, to our very first SKA cast. And Brian, knowing you like I do, there's a chance that you've got a beer there, and if you do, cheers. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, cheers. I didn't realize this is the first ever, Vorlich podcast.
We are going to be setting the bar nice and high here.
Or really low, depending on your perspective.
Well, look, Brian, a lot of us in the beer industry are familiar with the work you and your team do here in the U.S. to advocate for the industry, but for those new to the beer industry, or maybe for those outside of the country not familiar with what you do, talk to us about the Beer Institute and what your mission is.
So the Beer Institute has been around since 1862. We were founded during the Civil War in opposition to tax increases being levied on brewers to help pay for the Civil War. We were reorganized in the 1980s as the United States Brewers Association, and then eventually became the Beer Institute. We largely represent brewers, domestic brewers and importers, the largest brewers and importers in the United States. Our members represent about 85% of the total beer volume in the United States. We have 5 board members, representatives from Anheuser-Busch, Molson Coors, Heineken, Constellation Brands, and FX Matt, which is obviously the producer of Saranac and Flying Dog. We're really proud to represent these brewers and the great individuals that work for them across the United States. As you know, the beer industry supports about 2.4 million jobs, over $400 billion in economic output, and we're proud to be their voice in Washington. We have a small but mighty team of 11 people here in Washington, D.C. Because of our small staff, we can't be everything to everyone, so we really try to focus on the core issues that impact the beer industry, and we really only do 4 things at the Beer Institute. We do advocacy, so we are the lobbying arm of the beer industry, both here in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill with federal agencies, with the White House, but also at state capitals across the country. We do public affairs campaign to promote our advocacy work. We do research. Our sales to retail program is really key to brewers across the country. And then we celebrate beer. We throw great parties for Hill staff and policymakers, regulators, to really celebrate the delicious liquid that our members produce.
Well, great. Thanks for that, Brian. And hearing you talk through this, it just reminds me of all of our work together, both with the company that I actually work for, MicroStar Logistics, and of course the Steel Keg Association. And we've really been able to see up close all that you do to advocate for the beer industry and the 2.5 million jobs that the beer industry supports here in the U.S. And the work you do with all the other major leading trade organizations, the National Beer Wholesalers Association, the Brewers Association, of course the Steel Keg Association. So thanks for all the work that you all do to tackle some of the real challenges facing our industry and also take advantage of some of the opportunities we all have in front of us. And that really brings us to what brought this conversation about, is all the work that you've been doing to introduce the Cheers Act. Tell us a little bit about the Cheers Act and the background on that.
Yeah, the background is interesting. Our voting board got together last fall, and Dan, you've been a vocal proponent of beer category health and specifically draft beer. And what we did was we took a look at the numbers post-pandemic, and we saw that draft beer is down 20% since the pandemic. And a light bulb popped off in all of our heads, and we said, what can we do to help bring back draft? That would be incremental benefit to all of beer. And as you well know, the on-premise draft beer is where brands are made. When consumers walk into bars, restaurants, they decide to try a new beer. It's the freshest beer they're going to have, and it's a great experience. I obviously come from the hotel industry, which was uniquely impacted by the pandemic, but I work closely with the Restaurant Association, the Independent Restaurant Association, the Franchise Association, and we talked to them and we said, would something like this actually be helpful? Would a tax deduction for draft systems be of benefit? And they ran the numbers, we ran the numbers, we started working with the tax writing committees on Capitol Hill, and we came up with the CHEERS Act, which is now bipartisanly introduced in the House of Representatives. We're in the process of getting that bill introduced in the Senate. We're still in the infancy stages of the legislative process, but right now we really need to build out that infrastructure. We need to build out the level of support. We need to build out the organizations that are supporting it. We got to create some buzz about it. And you mentioned the NBWA. They're in town right now for their fly-in. They're going to be talking about the CHEERS Act up on Capitol Hill. The Brewers Association is coming to town to Washington, D.C. here in June. They're going to be talking about the CHEERS Act. The American Beverage Licensees, which represent the on and off-premise bars and packaged goods stores, they're endorsing the bill. So we're really creating a lot of momentum. And at the end of the day, this benefit will accrue to those restaurants, to those on-premise, off-premise, those venues, the hotels that have draft system, you name it, the benefit's going to accrue to them. But at the end of the day, beer is going to be benefited because rising tides raises all ships, right? If we get a 5 or 10% increase in draft because of this legislation, that helps all of us. And it's really nice to have a positive, proactive bill that we can be lobbying on in Congress. And it's a positive change for the industry.
Great, thanks. And so how's the bill been received? Obviously, it's got strong support, bipartisan support from the co-sponsors who've signed on to the bill so far, but you've also had the opportunity to walk the Hill with members of your board and other beer industry leadership to talk with members of Congress. What's the reception been like?
Really positive. Section 179D of the tax code has been in existence for quite some time. It gets amended a lot for various reasons. And the benefit of this legislation is that it provides an energy efficient tax credit. So if you're putting in a new draft system or updating an old draft system, you're gonna receive this benefit. And Congress, notwithstanding sort of the political dynamics and the political headwinds that we're facing and the fact that the Republicans who control the House don't have a working majority, the Senate Democrats control the Democrats control the Senate, they don't have a working majority. The vast majority of legislators understand the need here, they understand the benefit, and this really isn't a partisan issue, right? It's bipartisanly introduced. They understand that the benefit, again, is going to accrue to those restaurants and those on-premise locations that really struggled after the pandemic. Not to get on my soapbox here.
Oh, get on it, Brian. Get on it.
The Restaurant Revitalization Act, which was passed by Congress, only provided about $25 billion in relief for restaurants. That money was gone overnight. And so the vast majority of restaurants, hotels, on-premise locations received no benefit other than the PPP program. So the Hill still understands that. And all you have to do is look in downtown Denver, downtown Washington, D.C., all these urban areas where folks are still not coming back to the office, and you see vacant signs all over town. And I think it's a point of frustration that, and candidly, getting back on my soapbox, part of the problem is that the federal government hasn't mandated, at least in D.C., that federal employees have to come back to work. So the Department of Transportation is an empty building. Those restaurants around there that rely on those federal workers are still struggling. And so we see a role in this in bringing back the vibrancy of inner cities. And when we were out in Denver for our annual meeting, we met with the mayor, and he understood this right away, right? He got it, that part of the problem is we need to get the cities vibrant again. We need to get people back in restaurants. We need to get people back in bars. We need them walking around downtown. And this is just a really small part of the solution, but we think it is part of it.
There are 375,000 bars and restaurants and brew pubs and hotels and venues around the country licensed to serve alcohol today. And it's a pretty that hospitality industry is a pretty unusual industry because they play such an important role in their communities and their local economies. And 85% of those are small and independent businesses. Once you start talking about, look, this is your favorite steakhouse, this is your favorite brew pub, this is that hotel that's just such a central part of your community. Those are the businesses that will really support, feel the support from this Cheers Act. I got to believe that response has really been tremendous.
1,000%, and that's the way it's designed. That's where the benefit accrues, and it's very clear and it's very easy to understand that this is going to help provide some modicum of tax relief to these businesses that they can in turn reinvest into their facilities or into their employees or improvements on premise. And legislators understand this and they want to be part of that solution.
And the other thing that's exciting about this, as we've been thinking about, as we understand it, is that it's one of those rare things that every segment of our industry, from large brewers to small craft brewers to beer wholesalers, of course the retailers, it's something that they can really all get behind. And so this is the kind of thing that, as we walk this path together, seems like it really has this potential for us to win as we walk down the path to hopefully getting it passed in 2025. But all those meetings, all those opportunities to raise awareness for the bill is builds the kind of connectivity that could bring the industry together in a way that the beer industry really could benefit from these days.
Completely agree. And the legislation is written in such a way that virtually everyone is eligible for this tax credit, right? From the largest venue. So if a new stadium is being built, that stadium would be eligible for this tax credit up to a certain amount for installing new draft systems. Down to the brew pub, the local neighborhood brew pub, if they have a draft system, they're eligible for it. Cider, eligible for it. So we wanted to make sure that it was drafted in such a way that it would benefit everyone. We didn't want to exclude anyone, and that's going to hopefully drive momentum. The first thing that everyone can do is they can reach out to their members of Congress, both in the House and in the Senate, explain the bill to them, urge them to co-sponsor the bill in the House, urge them to sponsor the bill in the Senate. That's what NBWA is doing today. That's what the BA is going to do. That's what we did together when you were in town to lobby on the BI Hill Day. I mean, that's the first part. Social media will be an important part. We're going to be creating a whole suite of social media applications that will support the bill. One of the ideas that we're working through is creating a Cheers-specific web page where retailers, where on-premise establishment, bars, venues can just type in their address and it'll auto-populate the information and it will generate a letter to Capitol Hill. One of the things we really want to do is make sure that we have a location in every single state that endorses the bill. It helps when we've got companies like Inspire Brands, the parent owner of Buffalo Wild Wings. They have endorsed the bill. They have locations all across the country. Organizations like the National Restaurant Association, the International Franchise Association, all endorsing the bill. And we're spending a lot of time talking to other retailers to endorse the bill. In fact, we're hoping that the National Retail Federation will come out and endorse it. All of that's going to build momentum. We want to cover the entire United States, legislators from both parties talking about the legislation and the need for this and the benefits it'll provide to local businesses, to the smallest mom and pop bar and restaurant to the largest venue.
Great, and as I understand it, the play is to really build momentum as we work towards hopefully passing the Cheers Act in 2025, but it's the kind of thing where it's a win that for the industry every step of the way, because it's really building that connectivity between the brewers and the wholesalers and bringing the beer industry together in support of those retailers, those independent bars and restaurants, to really let them know that that beer has their back. And so it's kind of a win as we walk this path together with the Beer Institute's leadership.
I totally agree, and I think that there's a lot of benefits to the legislation that may not be front and center, but one is for the consumer, more draft makes better beer, right? It is the freshest, most delicious beer that you can possibly have. The sustainability elements, right? The amount of waste that we're going to help take out of our waste system and our waste streams is huge. So there's, whether you're a Democrat and you're focused on environmental sustainability and recyclability, we cover that. Or you're a Republican and you're focused on job creation and lower taxes for businesses, we cover that. If you're a consumer and you want to have the best beer you can possibly have, the freshest beer, it covers that. So we're really making sure that we're covering all angles here.
Now you are singing our song there, and Brian, it's so great to have you and the team on the front lines there. I've been fortunate enough to work with the Beer Institute for a long time, longer than I care to admit, probably 20 years now, and I've seen personally all the work you all do. So I got to put a shameless plug for anybody listening. Supporting the Beer Institute is a surprisingly easy thing to do, and the benefits are tremendous to your company, but also to the industry. The access you get to information through the Beer Institute's chief economists, the way they bring leaders of the beer industry together to really tackle some of the challenges facing our industry, but also get after the opportunities that we have in front of us. So I'd encourage you to consider getting involved with the Beer Institute. And it's a fun thing to do because they are a great team to work with.
I was going to say, you must have started working at MicroStar when you were 5 years old.
Yep.
Because I mean, you've been in the industry for 20 years.
I'm aging quickly.
But I will say this, I mean, it is rare to find an issue like this that is the great unifier, where we have on letterhead the BI, the NBWA, the BA, the ABL, restaurants, retailers, franchise, you name it. Everyone is supporting this bill. And one of the things that I've been talking about since I joined the BI about 15 months ago was beer industry unity, that we needed to be speaking with one voice, and that collectively we're much stronger together as opposed to being divided and sort of focused on our own myopic issues. And I'm really glad to see that everyone's jumped on board with this legislation. I think that we're building a lot of great momentum. Like you said, this is going to be a long road, and we are just starting down the path, as you said. Congress has a hard time walking and chewing gum at the same time. But I will say, again, nonpartisan, apolitical issue. Lobbying on beer is not a hardship duty. So going up to the Hill and saying, hey, will you support beer? Will you support bars? Will you support restaurants? Folks have an inclination to support us. So we get the House bill introduced, we build up co-sponsors, we get the Senate bill introduced, hopefully we can build up co-sponsors. This is all foundational work that we're going to do for the rest of 2024 with our eye on the next Congress. So we'll have a new Congress coming in January of 2025. We'll probably have new leadership on both the House and the Senate. We could have a new administration. So we'll restart the efforts. But all of this foundational work, all the collateral, all the data that we're going to have is really going to provide us a springboard going into the next Congress.
Brian, that is the perfect note for us to go out on, except to raise a glass and to say thanks again for joining us on our first SKA Cast. I look forward to having a beer with you and the crew in person soon, but until then we'll have to do it virtually. So Brian Crawford with the Beer Institute, thanks for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, Dan. Thanks for your leadership. See you soon.